Not that long ago, I had the great displeasure of watching the movie Died Suddenly. I'm a pretty big fan of conspiracy theories, and I am, to put it lightly, a buff on COVID and the vaccines. And I was like, this is going to be a great movie. Um, I'm sure I won't believe a lot of the stuff that's in here, but maybe they have some compelling information that I haven't heard about. It was trending on Twitter the day it came out, and I knew that I had to watch it. The movie doesn't start off very strong. There's like some like a bunch of different shots clipped together that don't really mean anything, and then they start going right into talking about the issue that they think exists. It's really important to note that almost nobody that they talk to in the entire movie is an actual doctor. It's almost exclusively embalmers. Some of them are named, some of them aren't. There's a couple of like military or ex-military, I think like Air Force surgeons or something like that. But the really important thing about all of the claims made in the movie is that they offer literally zero evidence to support any of it. So the big conspiracy is that the vaccine supposedly cause blood clots, like interesting blood clots that they don't normally see.
A lot of the substances that I'm seeing are stuff that looks pretty much, it's this white fibrous stuff. Now, instead of calling them blood clots, I try to refer to them as white fibrous clots or white fibrous structures. How come all of a sudden these things are happening in so many people? When I first started seeing these strange clots, in the beginning I thought, this is kind of weird, it's kind of crazy, I don't understand. As I started gathering more and more photographs, I'm able to share it amongst other people that I work with.
The issue with this is that um, they don't explicitly say or prove in any way, shape, or form that the people that they're getting these from are vaccinated. Fun fact, COVID is significantly like double-digit times more likely to give you blood clots than the vaccines are. And so they say that they haven't noticed these blood clots since the vaccines came out. Well, cool, you didn't notice them. Also, there are totally legitimate medical reasons for these blood clots to exist, um, which is just the beginning of the terrible amounts of claims that this movie makes that it offers literally zero evidence to support. Now, if you're against the vaccines, this movie's probably just going to make you feel like it's proving to you exactly what you already thought and that you were already right. But I would really caution that because, like I said, there's not a single piece of evidence in this entire movie. Not one. There's nothing. This is the most nothing burger of all nothing burgers I've ever seen in my entire life. The claims are huge, and it does, to its benefit, create a compelling narrative with the way that it shows you some blood clots. There's a scene where they're pulling a clot out of a heart, and it's completely detached from anything else. This guy pulls it out. It says something like, "Is this what you're talking about?" And he says, "Yeah," but there's no indication that it was anybody that had previously talked in the movie either. It was really weird. And they make like no attempt to try to like connect that into the conversation about the clots. It's just like a different shot. Um, so aside from just making up claims that can't be substantiated whatsoever in the movie, they also lie. Some of the people they say died are actually still alive. Some of the people whose deaths they used for the movie died of things like car crashes, things like that. It's really a hot mess of um, it's as if a really lazy Alex Jones decided to put out a movie. They didn't fact check anything. One of the things that I thought was really funny when I watched it on Rumble, and it said award-winning filmmakers, and I looked up the filmmakers, and for the life of me, I couldn't find any awards they won. So I'm just going to assume that they decided to give themselves the awards, or like they won them in high school or something. Because as far as I can tell, these guys have no awards whatsoever, and I don't think that they deserve any. as somebody who really enjoys a good conspiracy theory, I really require that something get provided for me to believe in the thing that is being talked about. But when you have just a bunch of embalmers and funeral home directors getting together to talk about this thing that they've noticed with zero evidence, I can't stress enough how much they have absolutely fucking nothing throughout the entire movie. It's just people talking about their opinions, and one guy who's really really mad and is like trying to coax people into talking to him. Uh, there's no reason to believe the ideas that are expressed in this movie at all. I think my favorite part is in the beginning of the movie. They show the Bill Gates clip where he talks about ways to reduce the population, and in it he mentions vaccines. And then there's this guy, and he says it's common sense to understand that the vaccines are going to kill you, based on what he said.
Now, the world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Well, common sense would tell you if you have a man standing in front of you saying he's going to reduce the world's population by 10 or 15% using vaccines, what does that mean to you?
It's pretty obvious to me that what Bill Gates is saying is when you create better living conditions, and especially through vaccines, uh, in a lot of underdeveloped countries, if you want to have kids, you have to have a lot of kids because they're going to die. And you don't know how many are going to make it or not, so you just have a lot of kids. And if you have vaccines, the odds are your kids aren't going to die really young. So you don't have to have as many. So you don't have as many people that end up surviving. And also, when living conditions go up through health and other kinds of innovations that are going to reach those countries as time moves on, you're less likely to have more children. This is just a known statistical fact that people that have better lives typically have less children. So, the common sense thing would be to think about what he actually said and kind of break down why might he say that, and not just say that, jump to the conclusion rather that he's promoting vaccines so that they'll kill you is very, very nonsensical. This was like one of their opening guys, which is really crazy to me. Other than that, they try to connect dots uh, that just can't be connected. The narrative of it, I think that, like I said, if you already are an anti-vaxxer, or particularly if you're an anti-COVID vaxxer, I think that they're going to do a great job in making you feel really strongly that you were always right. But I don't think that this movie is going to take anybody who didn't already think that the COVID vaccine had anything bad in it and is going to make them think that the vaccine is going to kill them. It's a very, very silly idea. They say things like, we don't even know what's in. You can Google what's in the COVID vaccines. It's not hidden information. It's not a secret. You can look it up. It's fine. It's available everywhere. One of the better parts about the movie is that it was only an hour long. Well, at least it's not like a huge undergoing to like deal with. They use a really provocative image for it where it shows like it kind of looks like a bunch of worms on a gloved hand, which is these like white fibrous blood clots they talk about. But there's plenty of reasons why the clots exist. Um, just like this, it's like known. Pretty much everything in this movie, if it's not debunked, is just purely anecdotal. And like I said, they almost by admission uh, say that they don't have any evidence by failing to show any evidence for anything that they say, even so much as not even suggesting that the people who they're pulling these clots from were vaccinated. They don't even try to make the claim. They just kind of allude to, like, well, I didn't see this since the vaccine came out. It's a pretty bad movie in that it's essentially just anti vax propaganda. sort of like painted up as to be like a legitimate documentary. I think that with the, I think that like, the editing was good, fine, and the narrative that they tried to tell. Like if I thought of this as like a mockumentary, I'd probably give it somewhere like a 7 out of 10, because like it'll keep you interested. Like it's almost like I was waiting the whole time for them to present something as evidence that I could take a look at and try to pick it apart. But like it just never came. There was an interesting part later towards, I think, further towards the end, where there's a doctor who talked about like the birth rates declining, and it might have been in Australia. I don't hold me to the Australia part, but I looked it up right after I watched it, and their birth rates actually increased since then. So I think it's a pretty bad movie. As far as accuracy goes, I'd give it like a 0 out of 10. But overall, I think I'd give the movie like a 3.5 out of 10, because it did keep me hooked in, waiting for them to drop the bombshell that's gonna substantiate everything that they said, or at least attempt to. I didn't expect them to actually be able to, but I expected them to try. And when they didn't even try, that was kind of difficult for me to deal with when I got to the end of the movie. So it's interesting because they allude to so much, but they never bring you anything, which is a huge disappointment. So I'd say like 3.5 out of 10. I'm pretty bummed out. I don't feel like I wasted an hour of my life, simply for the fact that it shows how far people will go to try to justify the idea that they have that there's something nefarious with the COVID vaccines. There is still, to this day, no reason to think that there's anything like remarkably unsafe. As time goes on, we're sure to have better numbers on things. We're going to see that some people had side effects. A very small percentage of people might die from it, just like any other vaccine. They seem to be remarkably safe in pretty much every way, and particularly when you compare to other vaccines, they're just as, if not safer, and they have just as good, if not greater. They have some of the best efficacy out of any vaccine. It's really impressive. So I would recommend that if you're really impressionable, just don't watch the movie. It'll freak you out. If you already got your shots, and you're not prone to falling into dumb bullshit that people want to throw at you, and you want to laugh, give it a watch. Otherwise, I just say skip it. It's a bad movie, made by what I can only assume to be bad people. If they really believed the things that they were saying, they wouldn't lie. They wouldn't use deaths that had nothing to do with a blood clot. They certainly wouldn't talk to all these people who are funeral directors and embalmers and not include a large list of doctors. And they would absolutely wait until they had some evidence to include in their movie. Which is why, I'm probably going to downgrade it. My final answer is 3 out of 10. It only gets the 3 because the editing's fine, and it does create a compelling narrative up until you realize that there's going to be literally no payoff, and you just wasted an hour of your life. If it was an hour and a half, I'd knock it down to 2 out of 10.
Thinking of my kids, what's left for them, but then what's coming down the road. The light in the tunnel could be the southbound train. Lord, please help them with their load. This has gotta stop. Enough is enough. I can't take this BS any longer. It's gone far enough. You wanna claim my soul? You'll have to come and break down this door. This has gotta stop. Enough is enough. I can't take this BS any longer. It's gone far enough.